It's time again for the Depeche Mode album review series. I've got my Emacs, it's armed with all the Depeche Mode sounds. Let's do this. Hi guys, and welcome to Piano and Keyboard Artist, where we discuss the artists related to pianos, keyboards and synthesizers. And continuing with my Depeche Mode album review series, this is the concluding chapter, part 6 of Music for the Masses. Now, if you've just stumbled upon this channel and you found yourself on this video, please go back to parts 1 and you will see parts 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 which precede this video. The links are in the description below. And in part 6 today we're going to continue with the breakdown of the songs. We're going to analyze the chords, the structures, run through some of the original sounds, and then I will do a piano improvisation at the end to illustrate the songs in their sort of vanilla form. Right, before we jump into this, there is no sponsor for this channel, but I would like to bring your attention to the Brian Griffin poster prints, which are for sale and available exclusively here through the Vaughan George channel. A selection of Brian Griffin's finest artwork. And what makes this offer different to any other offer in the world of this type is that when you purchase a poster print from the Vaughan George channel, all the artwork is signed personally by Brian Griffin himself, as demonstrated on this here. These poster prints are of the highest possible standards, as they are derived from the original transparencies and negatives. These are not scans, these are the real deal. For more information, you can go to vaughangeorge.com/shop. And that is a great way to support Brian Griffin's art, but also to support this channel. Thank you. In the preceding chapters, we obviously analyzed the songs in lots of detail. But in today's video, the final part 6, we are going to analyze the last tracks, which are I Want You Now, To Heaven to Hold, Nothing and Pimp. So let's run through those 4 tracks in detail, starting with I Want You Now. This is possibly one of the most intense songs on this album. And you really get the feeling that with this song, Martin is really singing from a place of pain and personal turmoil, personal experience, because you can feel the anguish, the desperation, the hunger, the yearning. My heart is aching, my body is burning, my hands are shaking, my head is turning. He is just so like longing for something, and you really feel the sincerity in this song, and he means what he's saying. And I feel that you know, if Dave had sang this song, we would probably have accepted it. It would probably be in a lower key if Dave had sung it, but I just wouldn't want it any other way. The chords of the song are very similar to, if we go back to Black Celebration, the close, naked, skin on skin, tears are falling, tears of joy. Kind of the same chords as that. That's just maybe coincidence, or if it might just be a familiarity for Martin as far as his writing is concerned. But this song is just really intense. And what was interesting was when I interviewed Dave Bascombe, we talked about when they produced this song, you've got that like, it sounds like really sleazy breathing. Now, you remember when they recorded this album, they were in this huge sort of like complex which had old instruments and stuff kicking about and timpanis and an old piano and just really interesting stuff. And it was Alan Wilder that happened to, I think, stumble across a music box, a concertina, as we called it in South Africa, a concertina. And this thing had no keys on it, so it was just the, you know, just the sort of, you know, the squash part, whatever. And by recording that in stereo, they recorded that, and then you got that. Now, I always thought that the was Martin's voice, because it does sound like the timbre of his voice, but it wasn't. Apparently, the sounds and a lot of those sleazy sounds they got from a VHS video, a porn VHS video, which I don't know where it was kicking about, but anyway, they sampled that in. And then the woman going, ah. Now, apparently, at the time in the city where they were recording, there was a fashion week, and there were a lot of, beautiful supermodels around the city, and the band actually went out and approached some of these models, brought them back to the studio, and it was these models who did the sexual parts of, the female sexual parts. So that is a very fascinating story, which I learned from the Dave Bascombe interview. But now let's look at the chords of the song and the structure. Starting on the A minor, and then it goes to the E minor. I want you now, tomorrow won't do. There's a yearning inside, and it's showing through. Reach out your hand and accept my love. We've waited for too long. Enough is enough. I want you now. It's very intense. It's almost quite religious in a way. And as I say, with the production of this album, they did sort of lean heavily into sort of like really sort of like classical, epic, orchestral, filmic kind of sounds, approaches, atmospheres, textures. And if you look at the B-sides, songs like Schöne Stjärna or Schöne. That and Agent Orange. They really did go down this sort of like piano, classical type of vibe. And once again, I put that down to a lot of Alan Wilder's classical training, which I think really helped, with not only the production, but the sort of like the soundscapes and the actual production, the chords, and taking Martin's songs to the next level. Remember, Martin wrote these songs. I will never take that away from him, but it was Alan that would look at them like a school teacher and say, okay, here's the idea, let's take it to the next level. So looking at the song structurally, it starts in the A minor. Down to the E minor. Back to the A minor again. Back to the E minor again. And now the change comes here. And it jumps up to the F sharp. Down to a D, up to the F sharp again. Then the I want you now. Then you've got the instrumental part. You see how, once again, it's just from the A minor to the E minor. And then the variation is on the bridge where it gets to, and I don't mean to sound like one of the boys, that's not what I'm trying to do. I don't mean to be like one of the boys, I just want you now. And then we're back into the so it's a very simple structure, but very, very effective. And I love the way, as I say, if we look at the way the track listing flows from this song, when you've just had Behind the Wheel finish, and then you get this. It's mad. It's so like, wow. And this album to me was, I heard this in the 90s for the first time, but I mean, God, at the time it must have just been so sort of like groundbreaking. And Depeche Mode always rode that line between the slightly avant-garde and underground and a little bit into the pop scene. It's very difficult to categorize Depeche Mode's music. Right, so I'm going to just play this song on the piano now in a sort of like free-flowing improvisation style, just so we can sort of hear it in its vanilla form. Once again, just an improvisation. Track 8 was To Haven't to Hold, and you'll remember we discussed in a previous video how the original way that Martin presented this song was very different to the way it was presented on the Music for the Masses album. And I spoke in that video how Alan Wilder did mention in interviews that this song demonstrated and perfectly illustrated the difference between Alan's taste and Martin's taste. I think this is where tension and conflict came into the studio. You know, obviously Martin being the writer will go, okay, this is the song. But then again, Alan being like the architect or sort of like the civil engineer. I always talk about Martin being the architect and Alan being the civil engineer. And the civil engineer sort of looking at what the architect has drawn and saying, okay, I see that, but I want to help you realize your vision. But at the same time, I want to put my artistic stamp on it and take it to the next level. And that is perfectly what was at play with this song, To Haven't to Hold. He took Martin's idea to another level, but albeit in a very different direction. Because if you listen to the Spanish Taster, it became a B-side on one of the singles. It is very different to obviously the To Haven't to Hold on the album. And I said in my previous video that I felt that the compromise may have been something like, okay, Martin, let's release it this way, in this very dark new wave type of way. and then the compromise will be you can release your Spanish taster version on one of the B-sides. And I think that was indeed the compromise. Now, I like the Spanish taster version, and as I said as well on my previous video, that I think that the Spanish taster version would have probably appealed to more people because it had that more melodic... It had that more sort of melodic thing going, whereas the version we got on the Music for the Masses album was very sort of like dark and very Recoil-like. But if we look at how, as I say, I've not heard the demo of To Have and To Hold, but I believe the demo would probably have had the... He would have probably had that in it. I don't know. I will try and find that demo and see if that is the case. Okay, so let's assume that Spanish Taster was the version that Martin had in mind. Now, if we look at the version which was released on this album, it's fascinating to see how that idea was derived from the Spanish Taster version and how we got to this version. Now, looking at the Spanish Taster version, so you can see how the Spanish Taster went from the C minor to the D minor to the F minor up to the, what's that, A flat. Sorry, I'm not musically trained, but watch where my hands are. So Alan and the band in the studio took that Spanish Taster and took it in a completely different direction. And the only thing that sort of remains consistent is the obviously the lyrics and the chord progressions. So if you listen to the version we got on the album, it's very dark, also starting on the C minor. It's I need to be cleansed. It's time to make amends for all of the fun. The damage is done. And of course, it doesn't really have much sort of chordal or melodic information. The whole song is made up of sort of atmospheres and textures, and how the atmospheres and the layers all form different sort of musical parts. So there's no sort of like, there's no sort of played melodies. It's just like atmospheres, brilliantly crafted. And I like the way this starts off with the, it's got that radio sort of broadcast. And my Russian, one of my Russian subscribers told me that apparently that, I don't know, I believe Alan sampled it. It's in Russian and it's something to do with the nuclear arms race. Russian subscribers, if you could validate what the radio transmission is saying in this record, that would be very interesting. But to us who cannot understand Russian, and also at the time there was this sort of East-West paranoia, the sort of Cold War, that kind of, although we're probably sort of coming out of the Cold War at that time, but there was this sort of like this East-West paranoia, and just hearing this droning sound with this, this Russian, if it was in English or a language which we could understand, it's probably not that scary for you if you're Russian, but to us here in the West who could not understand it, there was this real apprehension of Russia. There was that was the communists and the Russian, and the West were very paranoid of Russia back in the Cold War, and I think that this song plays into that sort of fear that we had of the Soviet Union. And that is one of the many reasons that make this song so dark and intense. It's the, I need to be cleansed. It's time to make amends for all the fun. The damage is done. It's kind of like you've lived a life of debauchery and sex and drugs and too much fun, and you are now paying the consequences for that, and you need to be cleansed. It's time to make amends. Straightforward, yet at the same time ambiguous. Martin Gore at his best, and indeed this song bringing Alan Wilder at his best. I don't want to give him too much credit for this, but it is Martin's song, but I believe the sound we got in this song, the real sort of Recoil song, the recoil sound. I think I would give a lot of that credit to Alan. And as I say, in this record, there is no sort of, there are no chords being played. They're just using atmospheres to sort of emphasize and create the structure of the chords using, you know, soundscapes and atmospheres. Brilliant song, absolutely brilliant. A real sort of standout track, perfectly capturing the atmosphere and the sort of, as I say, the East-West paranoia between, you know, the West and the Soviet Union at that time. Sitting Target. Nothing is one of the Depeche Mode songs which is very underrated as far as a lot of my subscribers here in the community are concerned. And this song, once again, is Martin's attack on God. Sitting target, sitting waiting, God is saying nothing. And to me, that used to mean, you know, when I first heard it, I imagined a soldier in a very sort of like volatile situation where his life was in danger and he was praying to God, but he was just a sitting target and God is saying nothing and he's probably going to die. And this is once again Martin questioning religion and politics and sex and all the questions we as human beings have about the world, and sex, drugs, rock and roll, religion, domination. Martin, you kinky bastard. But yeah, Martin does always ask the questions that we always ask in the most beautifully lyrical and musical way. What's great about this song, despite the lyrics and everything, the structure and the dung 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 bum 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 bum. It has a very sort of like robotic rhythm, bum 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 bum. And then when we get to the sort of the melodic parts, they're more sort of like light and human, for the lack of a better word. So once again, it's, that part to me contrasts with the dum 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 dum. It's got those like a really sort of pulsating deep bass line, and it's got this very sort of like robotic sequence. Ding 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 dong 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 dong. It has a real groove to it and a real feel. And the bass line is straightforward, characterized by that is obviously the real sort of like bass line, and then of course there are other layers over that. And then when let me just show you how the melody plays out over that bass line. As I say, this it does have a real sort of uplifting, sort of human or humane sound to it. And then later on, he layers that with this. The song is really powerful and really sort of like machine-like, and once again we have Dave singing his direct baritone and Martin doing the ooh-oohs in the background. Martin's voice once again being used as a special effect. The structure is quite simple. Starting here, it goes sitting target, sitting waiting, anticipating nothing. And then the variation on the chorus is, what am I trying to do? What am I trying to say? I'm not trying to tell you anything you didn't know when you woke up today. Once again. The melody in this song is a little bit related to Sacred, or it reminds me a bit of Sacred. If you listen to it does kind of remind me of Sacred in a way. A different song, but you can hear the elements of gore within that melody. Home in, cold beer, cold beer. People have often asked me, what are the lyrics to Pimp? And I just say, look, guys, there are no lyrics to it. This was, if you watch my interview with Dave Bascombe explains nicely how this was basically just illustrating Martin at his best, how he just showed up there with this idea. He went in to the vocal booth and just laid the vocals down. And as Dave Bascombe said, it was just amazing to watch, you know, because Martin had it all here and here. He just knew exactly what it was. And this is a real sort of inspiration type thing. If you're an artist, you know what it's like when you get overwhelmed by a feeling and you just got to put it down, but it doesn't usually make sense, you know, logical sense. If you're not an artist, you won't understand what that means. But the tormented life of us artists. But anyway, so he obviously just went into the studio and the home here, it's just a feeling. That's what it is. They're not words. They don't mean anything. But this song is bizarre. It's absolutely mad. You know, some people have said that it's a great song, but they felt that Agent Orange would have sit better on the album, because this is quite an odd choice of a track to have on the album. But then again, it doesn't feel out of place, and I just think it's great the way, you know, you have this as an ending song, and the way it just ends. It's got that huge sort of echo. But once again, as Dave Bascombe said when Martin was in the studio and he's recording this, just going in and, just layering layer after layer, I was surprised to hear that all the vocals in this song are Martin, all of them. The home in, you know, he's got this really sort of like operatic thing going there. So he obviously had it all in his head, and he just got in there and he just, you know, obviously just bashed it all out. Now, obviously, as all the piano tracks on this album, and indeed the B-sides, although they are written and composed by Martin, the actual piano parts would have been played by Alan. It starts off really simplistically, and then it just builds layer upon layer upon layer. It starts off with a very simple piano riff. As I say, it starts very simply, and as it builds, more reverberation gets added to it and more parts get added. And as Alan Wilder spoke on an interview, he said a lot of the songs on this album follow the structure where they, it's a looping sequence of 4 notes. So just like with Behind the Wheel, we had so Pimp does follow that same structure of, starting and then ending where it starts, sort of looping upon itself. And then with each pass, more and more is added to it. And as Alan said in an interview, by the end, you've got everything thrown in, including the kitchen sink. This to me is a remarkable song. And coming back to what Bascombe said on the interview, he said he was invited to one of the concerts, during this Music for the Masses period. And he said when he heard Pimp played, like, as the pre-show music, he said it was just fucking incredible. Just like awesome as you can imagine it. It's just cold beer, cold. Yeah, cold beer. People have said the lyrics are cold beer. Some people are saying it means hold in. So yeah, but anyway, they're not lyrics, guys. They're just vocal sounds as made by Martin for the sake of expression of this great track. Right, I'm going to just run you through the parts now. As I say, it starts with a very simplistic motive. Simplistic but strange. We get to the next part. And then again. Once again. And then we get the variation here. Final part. And then it just starts from the beginning and goes all the way through. Now, I did ask Dave Bascombe, did Alan sort of play that thing from beginning to end in, one pass? I didn't think so. And he said, no, it was, recorded in stages. Because it is quite grueling to play, the whole thing from beginning to finish. So what they would do is he would play a part and then they'd record another part and they'd kind of like patch them together. But this is a stunning song, and it is a very, very epic way to, end the album. And indeed, this was obviously used as the pre-show music for the, Music for the Masses tour. And I cannot think of a time where they actually had better pre-show music, because this is so dramatic and so epic. Right, my friends, and that brings us to the end of the Music for the Masses album review. And I'm now going to ask the 5 questions. Question 1. If I were to lose a song from this album, what song will it be? And that's always very difficult because, as I said, the way these songs flow from one to another and as a, sort of as a cohesive piece of work, it's very difficult to take one song away. It's kind of like, chopping your arm off or something like that. But if I had to lose a song from this album, I would probably lose Sacred. Once again, that's not because it's bad. I would just choose to lose that one. And it's always difficult to make that decision and answer that question. Question 2, what is the most radical song on this album? Well, Pimp is pretty radical as far as it's pretty out there. But I would say the most radical, and radical meaning whatever that means to you, I'm going to go with To Have and to Hold, because that was really quite standout as far as its sort of approach and production. To Have and to Hold is definitely a very experimental, underground, dark, atmospheric concept type track, and I think it fits really well onto this album, but at the same time it was a nice surprise. Very, very radical as far as I'm concerned. Question 3 is, which song have I listened to the most on this album over the years? It's quite difficult, I mean, because I usually listen to it from beginning to end. But I would say the song I've listened to the most on this album is probably Never Let Me Down Again. Which brings us on to the 4th question, which is my favorite song on the album now? Because as we know, as time progresses, our taste changes. I'm probably still going to go with Never Let Me Down Again. I just really have always loved that track. And I do think it is kind of like a track which defines Depeche Mode. And that brings us to question number 5. What am I going to rate this album out of 10? Well, with all things considered and all the in-depth information we've gone to, I'm going to give Music for the Masses 9.5. It's not a perfect album. It's one of the best albums they've done. It's nearly perfect. It's almost there. It's just that I feel that a song like Sacred, although not a bad song, it's a little bit of a filler in a way. Can't really give too much more reason than that. But this is close to perfection, guys. This is one of the best albums they've done. And as I say, Music for the Masses gets 9.5 out of 10. And now it's up to you, my friends. It's time for you to participate. Question 1, which song would you lose from this album if you had to lose one? Question 2, which do you think is the most radical track on this album? Question 3, which song have you listened to the most on this album over the years? Question 4, which song, as it now stands at this moment, is your favorite song from this album? And question 5, what would you rate Music for the Masses out of 10? And as always, my friends, I ask you to please subscribe if you have not yet, like and share this video with other communities that you feel will enjoy this content. And thank you so much for your support as always. I am now going to start preparations for the Violator album review, which is going to be a lot of work. And the Violator album review, I plan to run it over probably about 12 parts because I actually want to do 1 part per song. So it could go on for a while, but I'm sure you guys don't mind. Thank you so much for your support. I want to thank those of you who pledged money towards the Dave Bascombe trip. Your names will come up in the credits at the end. I'm also very glad that you guys enjoyed the Remix for the Masses remix, or the song which I produced for this album series. And let's listen to it one more time. And as we play out this episode, let's have a flashback and look at some of the highlights of this Music for the Masses album review series. Guys, thank you so much for your support as always, and I'll see you on the next video. Adios. So I'm going to do a Fletch now. And what was it on 101?
So
Fletch went.
So this is the rock and roll bus, eh?
It was Fletch that said that, wasn't it? It was Fletch that said, "Oh, this is the rock and roll bus," and then there was like a curtain, and there were these 2 people making out, which in this case is not going to be Lloyd and Simon. And then I think Alan came and said, "It looks like I've interrupted something here. I think I better just close the curtains." How is everyone?
I'm good.
They look nervous. They look nervous. Anyway, this is.
How excited Dave Bascombe.
Yeah. Simon, you're a bit tongue-tied.
This is my excited face.
This is Simon's excited face.
This is his general face.
And guys, I would like to say something. It's Simon's birthday today.
Oh,
so on the count of 3, we're going to sing happy birthday.
Yeah.
And then we're going to sing happy birthday to him when we take him for a curry. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Simon. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, mate. It's going to be a long day. What else would you be doing on your birthday if it weren't for today?
No idea. Sleeping.
Moderating.
Okay, we're going to do some last minute checks now, and I will keep you guys reported as we're on the road.
Adios.
Got Simon behind the wheel. Simon, you're behind the wheel tonight. My Simon, drive anywhere, do what you want, I don't care. Tonight, we're in the hands of Simon. We hand ourselves over on a plate. Do, do, do.
Big page of questions there.
No, it's not that bad. I think we.
So, Mr. Bascom.
Mr. Bascom, could you give a Fletch clap, please?
There you go.
Are we going live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? Mr. Bascom, are you ready, sir?
I am.
Ready with your fresh clap.
Get bored of that.
That's
He hasn't in 40 years. Bless him.
He doesn't need a Fletch clap. You got one for free there anyway.
Thanks very much for that.
Thank you so much, guys. Check out Dave Bascom. I'm going to put links to everything below, and yeah, we'll keep in touch with you. Dave, thank you so much.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Bye bye.